Welcome to Bloom Day 1 Facilitation video. Here in this video, you will find how to facilitate Day 1. I'm really excited about it. Clearly, you're probably in your first 5 to 10 day ones when you're watching this, and what an exciting part of the journey of being a Bloom growth coach to be launching a new client. It is a significant moment as you embark on the Bloom journey with your client, knowing the possibilities of where they will be even 90 days from now and the growth they will experience in the next 12 to 18 months. I know that right now on your coaching journey, you likely have some anxiety. That's completely normal. Please channel that into studying and preparing more. You will have used the client onboarding checklist to set your client up for their Bloom Growth software account such that email invitations have been sent to the team 48 hours prior to your Bloom Day 1 with the team. Then once you're in the room, I invite you to do a breathing exercise and let the anxiety go. Make sure to do all your prep in advance. You arrive early to the session and you've got bells on, right? Lunch, the facility, the markers, all the logistics, anything that can be handled in advance, you have handled 100%. You've prepared thoroughly and now you're here. Once you kick off, it can become such a joy. After you've completed your first 5 or 10 sessions, any imposter syndrome you've got going on will be behind you. These day ones, especially when it's a target market client who genuinely wants you, are some of the most enjoyable sessions you'll ever facilitate. Allow yourself to fall in love with entrepreneurs and their teams. You won't be as successful as a growth coach if you can't allow yourself to be passionate about helping entrepreneurs and their teams. As you begin the day, make sure your session room is set up with the basics: water, caffeine, and sharing where the bathrooms are, and you start the day on time. Now, everybody's in the room ideally on time and they all have their check-in sheets done. Remember, 4 out of 5 times, you'll have the Bloom Day 1 client workbook in front of everybody. These 3 essentials help the day go smoothly. Next, dive right in and express how excited you are to start this journey. Keep in mind that every client signing up with a premium coach like you wants to feel that their coach genuinely wants to work with them. Make it clear that you're excited about the day ahead and excited that they chose you. Now, let's get started. The first step is to open the Bloom Day 1 client workbook. You can see it here on the left. Begin by running through the Bloom journey and the agenda. Explain that reviewing the Bloom journey and agenda is important because as adult learners, it helps us refocus on why we're here, what we're doing, and how we'll accomplish it. Once you've grounded everyone in where we are in the journey and the agenda for the day, move on to the check-in. This will allow you to build the O&O list as the day progresses. You'll share the agenda as follows. As soon as we've reviewed our agenda for the day and shared our expectations and outcomes for the day, we'll dive into sharing your responses to the Bloom Day 1 check-in sheet that you brought with you. If you have not filled it out, please take a few minutes to get it filled out. We'll celebrate the wins and begin building our O&O obstacles and opportunities list together. Next, we'll move on to the 8 Bloom Growth OS essentials. When you heard them the first time in our 90-minute discovery meeting, you were deciding if this was the right journey for you. Now that you've committed to it, you'll hear these essentials differently and absorb the information in a new way. Each of you has brought an object that represents a proud moment. We'll be using that during our relationships conversation. Every time we're together, we're going to dedicate a portion of our agenda specifically to fostering emotional intelligence, team connection, joy, and fulfillment. You will experience personal epiphanies and collective transformation for long-term potential. Next, we'll set our top priorities for the next 90 days. This is where we will agree on the most important projects to build a better business. After setting quarterly priorities, we'll take a few minutes to prioritize and clean up the O&O list. Some items will be removed after we set quarterly priorities, others will be 3D'd, discover, discuss, and decide, during your Bloom weekly meeting, and yet others will be added to the parking lot to be reviewed in coming months. We are going to build the future structure of what this organization looks like 12 months from now. This will be crystal clear through identifying roles and responsibilities. Today we'll take a first pass at your 5-year vision. Occasionally, it comes together perfectly on Bloom Day 1. Usually, it takes time to sleep on it, so we'll revisit and iterate on it on Bloom Day 30 and Day 60 until we all agree it gives us a North Star as an organization. Then we have a specific 90-minute weekly meeting agenda that we call the Bloom Weekly Meeting that we will teach you today and will eventually teach the rest of the organization. My promise to you, after 3 to 6 weeks, the Bloom Weekly Meeting will be one of the highest value 90 minutes in your week. To wrap up our day, we'll share our favorite and most valuable part of today's session. Pay attention to what we could do better at our Bloom Day 30 session and share a generous compliment. Best practices for today's meeting include showing up as a team of equals. This means not coming into this session as a department head, but rather as a strategic leader for this business. Consider all geographies, departments, people, and projects, and think about the organization as a whole. The idea is to rise up and take a broader view of everything, almost like looking at the organization from above. I invite you to be strategic, not tactical today. Please approach this with the perspective of the greater good of the organization. For us to do our best work, I need everyone to take a few risks in what they're willing to say today. This isn't a casual request, it's an important one. I'm asking you to show up with courage, willing to take risks, but to take them with the greater good of the whole organization in mind. This means you're not taking risks to benefit just your department or yourself as an individual, but instead focusing on the good of the entire organization. That's where the highest value lies, bringing your strategic mindset and courage to this session for the greater good. And as long as you're coming from the greater good of the whole organization, there's no way to get in trouble. In fact, it's applauded. Something like, wow, that was a crazy idea, but I sure love that you had it. As we share today, it's important that all of our conversations stay confidential by default. My coaching to you is to treat this as a leadership team project and maintain confidentiality. Specifically, anything risky that's shared here stays completely confidential. You can tell your team you're working on something, but avoid discussing specifics. The reason for this is to give you the freedom to change your mind during these first 90 days. Even if you're excited about something we create or discover today, hold off on sharing it with your team so you can refine it without premature expectations. Trust me, this is based on experience. Now, let's address tech distractions. Of course, we'll use technology throughout the day, but if there's anything buzzing, beeping, or distracting you, we need to eliminate that. For tangents during conversations, let's make a partnership around keeping things focused. If you feel I'm going off on one, please call me out as a member of this team today. As you facilitate, what's not explicitly stated in this material, but something you'll be doing, is reselling the client on this Bloom growth journey every day you're together. The goal is for them to stay engaged for 2.5 to 3 years. You'll go on to share. This sets the stage for today. Now, as you look at the Bloom growth journey in your client workbook, I encourage you to envision being part of the future. Here's where we are today, Bloom Day 1. Next is Bloom Day 30, which we've already scheduled for next month. On Bloom Day 30, we'll dive into relationships, high-performing teams, growth goals, and weekly KPIs. We will also cover your what, how, why, and communication and execution better than ever. By Bloom Day 60, we'll do relationships, unlock potential, create your core values, 3-year future, and annual goals. By Bloom Day 90, we will do relationships, transparent communication, reset quarterly priorities, finalize the growth plan, and start the conversation on the Bloom Company rollout, which is sharing Bloom Growth OS with the rest of the organization. We will then enter a rhythm of 5 days a year. Between months 9 and 15, you'll see momentum building throughout your organization. Results will begin coming more easily, primarily through sharper execution and better communication. During this time, the departments in your organization will start mastering Bloom Growth OS. It typically takes teams around 3 to 6 months to get good at the system. So if you roll it out at 6 months, they'll begin reaching proficiency during this period. You'll also have the right people in the right seats and be more decisive about people-related decisions. This doesn't always mean letting people go, though. Sometimes it does. More often, it involves adjusting people's accountabilities to fully optimize your current team and the work that needs to be done. You'll also find yourselves healthier as a team, enjoying work more, and being genuinely excited to be a part of this process. You'll be evolving into a process and data-driven organization, or at least making strong progress toward that goal. Some aspects of process and data take longer to bear fruit, but we want to ensure we start building them in these first 90 days. Does everyone feel clear about where we're at and where we're going? Before we move on, I'd love for everyone to share the first question on their check-in sheet. What are your expectations and most important outcomes for our time together? Sally, you're on my left. Would you go first? Then you'll have each team member share their expectations and outcomes. Be listening for anything that does not line up with today's agenda and gently course correct them in such a way you get full buy-in for today's agenda. Be writing down each person's response so you can keep it in mind during the session. After everyone has shared their expectation and outcomes, share the following with the team. Thank you for your sharing. My expectations for today, and how I'm inviting you all to show up, are as a team of equals, acting as strategic leaders and working for the greater good of the organization. To do the highest quality work as a team, I need you to rise above your usual seat or department role and think like an advisor to the entire business. I want you to take a God view of your organization, seeing the big picture, all its people, geographies, products, services, clients, and customers everywhere. That's the mindset I'm asking you to embrace today. Beyond that, I invite you to be the most courageous you've ever been. If you don't find yourself saying or sharing something bold or risky today, you may not be fully engaging in the way I'm requesting. I'm asking you to take big, bold risks in your comments or questions as long as they align with the greater good of the organization. When your heart is in the right place, you can share or ask anything, and it will be a contribution to the group. That's my coaching and my invitation for today. To be a strategic team of leaders working for the greater good, to take risks like never before, and to lean into discomfort so we can achieve the best possible outcomes. You'll then say, I know this is important for someone here. If you would, go ahead and check off the Bloom journey and outcomes. That's what we've just completed. Satisfying, right? Next up, we're going to do the remainder of the Bloom Day 1 check-in sheet. I noticed earlier as you were coming in today, everybody has it and it's all filled out. That's awesome. Thank you. Sometimes you'll have a leader who hasn't filled it out in advance. Often this is the same leader that shows up 1 minute before the session starts. You know these leaders. They're not always the visionary or the sales and marketing leader, but most of the time they are. If this does happen to you, there are 2 ways of handling that. Because this is before the start of the day is one, you can say, let's take 7 more minutes and we'll all get our coffee extra fancy at the machine while Sally here fills that in. Sally, just write 3-word answers and it's the first thing that comes to mind. Please remove all social filters and take some risk in what you're about to say. Think about it for the greater good of the organization. And then you let Sally sit there and sweat it out for 7 minutes and scribble in all her answers. That's one way. The other way you can do it is 2, like an interview. This is where you don't even give them the check-in sheet, and when it is their turn, you ask them the questions and document their answers. That also works well, and everyone should try both methods to see which works best for you. About 1 in 5 of your sessions will have a leadership team member who hasn't filled out their check-in sheet in advance and will want to fill it out while their teammates are sharing. That's unacceptable. It's such a disrespectful way to listen to your teammates who have prepared. You have to insist on one of the 2 solutions. We'll start with the Celebrate the Wins section. Please share the people shout-outs. I'll set a timer on my phone. 3 minutes is the right amount of time for this. Brendan, you're on my left. Do you mind starting? Let me just get my timer out. I make sure my phone is on airplane mode to avoid distractions or notifications popping up. I place the timer in front of him so it's visible and say, go ahead. The timer counts down just as we practiced in coach training, and Brendan goes through his answers. And if someone is going shallow or not sharing the impact, significance, or feeling behind their personal or professional highlights, use your emotional intelligence and facilitation skills to gently nudge them. Often the first person to share goes shallow. When you nudge them to share their feelings about it, the rest of the room notices and thinks, oh, if I don't go deep enough, I'm going to get nudged too. You'll find that after that first nudge, most people naturally open up. If the first person does go meaningful, it's often the second person who goes shallow, and that's when you give the nudge. This sends a clear signal to the room. We're paying attention now. This isn't a time to zone out and daydream. Remember, what you're looking for in these personal and professional highlights is the significance, impact, or feeling behind them. That's what makes the check-in meaningful. Once everyone has shared the Celebrate the Wins section, set another 3-minute time and have the team share the O&O opportunities and obstacles list. As the team shares, you will capture O&Os along with who shared the O&O in the software. Once complete, have the team return to page 1 and check off check-in. Okay, let's move on to the 8 Bloom Growth OS Essentials. These are what we reviewed during our 90-minute discovery meeting together. Today we are going to go through them in such a way that you'll hear them differently. The essentials are what we will be putting into place over the next 30 to 36 months together. Some of them will start bringing value right away. Some of them are a little slower burn. As we review them, I'm going to ask you to self-rate on a scale of 1 to 10 on how far away you are from each one of these essentials. We'll compile a team average, and we'll check in on your progress either at your first Bloom quarterly or your first Bloom annual. This will be one of the quantifiable ways that we're showing progress through the Bloom Growth OS. The first essential is the growth plan. Ask the team to write it in their client workbook. You can say, I've been a professional facilitator for X number of years, however long it is true for you. And every time I go to facilitation training, they tell me to get my participants working and to be writing. There is something about the way that your brain processes when you write it down. So please, does everybody have a pen? Everybody has a pen by this point in the day. And whatever you have to do as a facilitator to get everybody writing, please invite them. Sometimes I have to go stand over the visionary and point to the place. I'm like, this is where you could be writing the words creation, documentation, and enrollment in our future, but I rarely do this. Mostly, you can be pretty light in your touch and everybody will follow orders. So, next to the growth plan, write down the words creation, documentation, and enrollment in our future. The word enrollment means a little bit like selling all of your employees on being a part of your future. On a scale of 1 to 10, write down your own rating on how aligned is everyone around your plan. 10 is all of our employees are aligned and working towards a common goal. 1 is we have a high level of misalignment and not on the same page. I'll start with Joan this time since I started with Sally for the check-in earlier. Joan, what's your rating? Just the number, no explanation, please. John, what's yours? Greg? Henry? Great, let me write them all down. I've got my calculator ready to add these up. When I worked with a client recently, I went through all the essentials and had them rate individually first. After completing all 8 essentials, we circled back, got the team rating for the first one, discussed explanations, and added items to the O&O list. Then we repeated that process for each subsequent essential. I'm not sure which method is better. I encourage coaches watching this to try both ways and share feedback. Going through and having everyone rate individually first seems efficient. The facilitation guide suggests it takes 40 minutes total, so yes, about 5 minutes per conversation. As a professional facilitator, start by checking the clock to ensure you're pacing correctly. If you're saving the ratings and team averages for later, you'll need to stick to about 2 minutes per essential, leaving 3 minutes for the team averages at the end. Another tip, instead of running your own calculations, you can delegate that task to a team member. Delegating small responsibilities like this keeps them engaged and adds value. Whenever you can, involve the team in running parts of the session. It makes the experience more interactive and impactful for everyone involved. Your brain stays free to facilitate other things. In the first method, you spend the whole 5 minutes per essential, handling ratings, team averages, and discussions all at once. In the other method, you go through all the essentials quickly, taking about 2 minutes per description and individual ratings. Then you come back, gather team averages, identify the lowest ratings, and facilitate a discussion to add to the O&O list. I suggest trying both and seeing what feels best to you and share your feedback. The second essential is people. On the lines next to people, write right people, right seats, RPRS. When we think about people, we're referring to employees, contractors, vendors, customers, and clients. Between these groups, you cover your whole business. You don't have a business without them. If you're wondering whether some of these 8 essentials are more important than others, the answer is yes. People are a key focus. Do we have the structure needed to double the business with the right people, aligned with our culture, and in the right seats? We want to work with people we love and respect while having fun. Achieving our business goals. This applies to everyone connected to your organization. Are right people in the right seats throughout the organization? 10 being everyone fits our culture, and they are succeeding in their role. 1 is we have many people that do not fit our culture or are not finding success in their current role. The third essential is sales and marketing. Write attracting new and growing existing clients and customers on the corresponding lines. What I say for this is all organizations put effort into getting new clients. Most, however, don't give nearly enough time and attention to retaining and growing existing clients. We're going to be spending equal time on both. The whole point of implementing a growth system like this is to help you predict your growth and then achieve it. Whatever your growth target is, that's what we'll work on together. If there's an overarching theme to what we're doing here, it's about individual and organizational growth. You need to grow your people to grow your business. How effective are you at attracting new and growing existing clients? 10 being we're growing as fast as we want, 1 being we have room to grow. The fourth essential is meetings. Write, love your meetings on the line next to meetings. This is about organizing all the inputs to your recurring meetings, whether they're one-on-one, departmental team meetings, or all company gatherings. It's about running your meetings on customized agendas and organizing all the outputs from those meetings. The goal is to create a closed loop that drives progress towards your goals. Ultimately, it's about fewer meeting minutes while making your meetings more effective. Getting more done in less time is the punchline here. How enjoyable, effective, and productive are all of your internal meetings? 10 being, we start on time, end on time, we are productive, we have fun, and we get things done. 1 being our meetings suck. We don't start on time, we're not productive, we go overtime, and we are not having fun. The fifth essential is finance and data. Write enabling proactive decisions on the line. All finance functions in a business typically report on the past. Often this reporting comes too late, sometimes 60 to 90 days or even longer. The outcome we are looking for is tracking the activities that come before your results using finance and data as a strategic function, not simply a reporting function within the organization. We have weekly KPIs that directly impact our quarterly and annual growth goals. The weekly KPIs are leading indicators, activities that give us insight to course correct in real time. How well does your finance and data information enable proactive decisions? 10 being all the time, 1 being never. The sixth essential is process. Write improving speed and quality of recurring tasks on the lines next to process. Somewhere between 80 and 90% of what your team is doing every single day involves tasks that have been done before or will be done again. Yet, most organizations don't give nearly enough energy, attention, or activity to improving these processes. We often see a 10 to 20% improvement in speed, quality, or effectiveness. For example, let's say payroll here is $5 million a year. A 10 to 20% gain translates to somewhere between $500,000 to $1 million in increased speed or quality. Here's a quote I often reference: "Goals are for people who want to win once. The process is for people who want to win over and over and over." If you think about how much energy your organization has spent on goals over the years versus energy on improving processes, it's probably time to start focusing more on processes. So, go ahead and give yourself a rating for this one. Do we have a documented process, best practice, for the recurring tasks in our business that ensures speed and quality of all our recurring tasks? 10 being our processes are improving the speed and quality of all of our recurring tasks and positively impacting client satisfaction. 1 being we do not have an agreed upon documented process and we consistently experience breakdowns in the recurring tasks of our business. The seventh essential is technology. Right, our technology is internally optimized and externally leveraged. We're going to look internally at the technology you're using to see if we can optimize, which means using it to its full potential to support execution and communication excellence, improve speed and quality, simplify things, save money. How well are we optimizing the use of technology such that it supports execution and communication excellence within our organization? Getting that right can be a game changer. Technology makes the sales and marketing pieces of the puzzle easier. Go ahead and rate yourself. How well is our internal and external tech serving us? 10 being our tech is simple and effective. 1 being we don't have a plan around it, there are overlaps and duplication. The eighth essential is relationships. Right, having fun growing together. This is an emotionally intelligent journey to becoming awesome with each other. Where are you at today in your relationships journey? Is everyone's ego is in the right place, working for the greater good, and is the team experiencing individual and organizational growth on a daily basis? How well are we doing in having fun growing this business with little to no drama? 10 being quite well, 1 being not at all. Once you've gone through all 8 essentials, you'll have the individual and team average ratings. For about 4 of them, you'll generate additional O&Os by facilitating conversations with the 2 lowest ratings. Dig deeper into the opportunities or obstacles that surface. After completing this, go back to the front of the client workbook and allow the team the satisfaction of checking off the Bloom Growth OS. Somewhere in here, you'll take a break. Ideally, you've moved quickly enough through the first agenda items, so this is your first break. If not, that's okay. Sometimes teams need a bathroom break every 60 minutes instead of every 90. When taking breaks, start a timer and remind the team to avoid tech distractions. Encourage them to grab caffeine, water, or use the bathroom. Tell them, we'll start as soon as everyone is back, but at the very longest, 10 minutes. Sound good? You start the timer. Everybody sees you start the timer. They'll be well behaved. They're paying real money to have you be effective. And again, ask them not to be on their tech during the break. Once complete, have the team return to page 1 and check off Bloom Growth OS. Relationships is a 2.5-year journey that we want to take our client teams on, setting them up for a lifetime of growth and personal development. What truly resonates with us are the human stories and achievements, helping someone overcome adversity, bringing a team together, and inspiring them to accomplish something they once thought impossible. This is the work we now want to do with our client teams. It's the gift we want to offer, creating deep, impactful moments. Day 1 is our introduction to this journey where we set the scene. Today, I'll focus on 2 things. First, I'll show you what you'll have in the room as coaches. Second, I'll walk you through the facilitator guide, explaining how I would approach the session, highlighting key elements to emphasize, and pointing out areas for reflection as coaches. Let's start with what you'll have in the room. As with all parts of the Bloom Growth OS, you'll have your client workbook. For some, the relationships page within the workbook is simply a holding space. For others, it's a place to take notes. But for you as coaches, the client workbook includes coach notes, and you will be able to see this. For each day of relationships, we've created what I call a 1-page summary or Cliff Notes. This summary serves as the heartbeat of the session. In a single page, it outlines everything you need to prepare in advance. It highlights key conversations you may need to have with the client, guidance for setting up the room, the messages you must land on, and the homework to assign. Much of the relationships work happens outside the session, just as it does within it. Often we're setting people up to leave the session and take action. For day 1, the relationship slide is intentionally light yet impactful, as it encourages participants to reflect visually. Today I want to focus on the facilitator guide, where I'd like to spend our time together. We've put significant effort into creating what is often 10 to 15 pages of content, ensuring you have everything you need to execute this with confidence. You'll notice the guide is structured into 3 sections to help you digest the information and understand the purpose of each module. First, you'll see the text in blue, which provides context for why we're doing this. When clients ask, "Why are we doing this?" the blue text gives you a clear explanation. Next, anything in green is a suggested narrative for you. This isn't meant to be read word for word, but we encourage you to use this type of language, internalize it, and make it your own. Lastly, the content in orange offers tips and suggestions. This includes guidance on tonality, as well as prompt questions to reignite discussion when things feel stalled or dry. That's the structure, so let's dive in. The first module focuses on the introduction to relationships, where we aim to accomplish 2 things. First, we want to land the impact and power of relationships. Second, we want to transition participants into being fully present in the room. Some of our clients may have done inner work like this before, while for many, it will be new. We need to acknowledge that we're asking them to engage a different part of their brain. They're shifting from the prefrontal cortex and neocortex, the regions responsible for logic and planning, back to the limbic brain. This older part of the brain governs emotions, motivation, memory, and behavior. For some, this shift might feel uncomfortable. It's also important to put ourselves in their shoes. They're likely walking into the room carrying a lot of stress, bombarded with emails, texts, or calls from their team. Junior staff may be seeking their attention, and they'll have a mental load of worries as they enter. Our role is to help them let go of those distractions. We're doing 2 things. We're landing on the importance of relationships and guiding them into the present moment. When I introduce relationships, I focus on 2 key elements. First, I want to emphasize the power of the emotional connection. Research tells us that when people feel mutual trust, a sense of psychological safety, and that they're part of something larger than themselves, teams thrive. We want participants to connect to this idea and reflect on a time when they've experienced it in the past. There are 2 reasons for this reflection. First, it helps shortcut the rationale for why this matters. When participants recall moments where they felt safe, aligned, and deeply connected to a team, it helps them quickly grasp what we're trying to achieve. For those who may not have had this experience before, it takes something that might feel abstract and makes it tangible and real. When others start sharing how this work has affected them, how much of a difference it made, and the joy it brought them coming to work, it truly clicks for everyone. As a facilitator, it's crucial that you prepare your own example for this moment. Secondly, some participants won't buy in unless they see a business case. High-performing leadership teams consistently outperform those that aren't high-performing. That might sound self-evident, but this concept of high-performing teams has been studied extensively since the 1950s. There's a significant body of research and knowledge to support this. Essentially, organizations led by high-performing leadership teams outperform their peer groups on every conceivable metric. A high-performing leadership team is defined by shared goals, mutual trust, robust accountability, and adaptive collaboration. These are the very qualities we're working to build into entrepreneurial leadership teams. If we can help them achieve this, the impact is clear. Across every measurable outcome, it leads to stronger business performance and continuous improvement. For those who might not immediately understand or believe this, it's an opportunity to land the business case. This is where we help them see that embracing some vulnerability and trusting the process will yield substantial rewards. Once we've established the business case, we shift their focus to the journey. I often remind participants that this isn't about molding them into some academically defined generic version of a leader. Instead, it's about helping them, both individually and collectively, become the best versions of themselves. By the end of this journey, we want them to feel they can challenge each other without seeing it as a threat or an attack. The goal is to foster a culture where challenging one another is about pushing for better outcomes and stronger answers they can trust and rely on because they've worked through them together. It's important to emphasize that this process is about helping them reach their potential, not forcing them into some rigid, academic definition of leadership. Our measure of success isn't limited to creating a high-performing leadership team. We aim to transform and elevate not just their professional relationships, but their personal ones as well. This work is about sparking meaningful, creative improvement in all areas of their lives. Before we jump straight into the content, there are two crucial things we need to address. The first, something I want to stress because it's incredibly important, is confidentiality. Now, everyone's heard the standard line, "What happens in the room stays in the room, Faisal." That's the most basic level of confidentiality. And while it's familiar, we need to go much deeper. People may share profoundly personal and sometimes emotional experiences. I've had one moment in my career where this went wrong. Someone shared something extremely traumatic, and instead of feeling supported, it caused them hurt, as though they were reliving the trauma. It's rare, but it can happen, and it's a reminder of how important this is. As facilitators, we have to create an environment of deep trust and safety where people feel protected and supported in sharing their stories. The first step is to establish boundaries with participants. Just because someone shares something in the room doesn't mean they're comfortable revisiting it outside the room. It's important to ask for their consent before bringing it up again, as this could otherwise cause stress. Secondly, during what we'd call the discovery phase, I always ask about the mental health and well-being support the organization provides its employees. Most organizations have employee assistance programs or similar resources. If someone overshares and feels traumatized, it's not your role to resolve that. You're not a professional therapist, so don't try to take on that role. Instead, guide them toward a safe space where they can access the support they need. Acknowledging the availability of such support is essential for creating a trusting environment. Now, the second thing we'll do, and I'll admit it might feel a bit awkward for some at first, is a breathing exercise. When I first tried it, I felt silly. But by the fourth or fifth time, it felt natural, even comforting. Why do we do a breathing exercise? Well, overstimulated brains and nervous systems need to be calmed before any meaningful inner work can happen. Breathing not only relaxes the nervous system, but also oxygenates the brain, enhancing clarity, focus, and emotional regulation. It helps center you, making it easier to engage fully in the process. For those familiar with breathing exercises, this will be a variation on box breathing. Typically, box breathing involves inhaling for 4 counts, holding for 4, and exhaling for 4. However, I've noticed some struggle with holding for 4 counts. So we'll modify it slightly. Inhale for 4, hold for just a second, and then exhale. Let me quickly walk you through an example of how to do this so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. When you're with your clients, I encourage you to just go with it. At first, your clients might look at you like you're a bit out of your mind, but trust me, they'll understand the purpose afterward, and I'll explain what happens after the exercise. When you guide them through the breathing exercise, start by ensuring they're in an upright posture. I often say, imagine there's a piece of rope attached to the top of your head, gently lifting you upright. Make sure their feet are planted firmly on the floor and their hands are resting comfortably on their knees. I like to suggest they make a light fist and let it drop onto their knees. Then, ask them to close their eyes, get comfortable, and take about 4 or 5 seconds to settle into the position before starting. When you begin the exercise, it's simple. Inhale to a count of 4. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Pause briefly, then exhale to a count of 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Pause briefly again. You're going to do that 4 times. When you finish, let them have about 4 or 5 seconds to settle, and then say, I invite you to open your eyes. The first thing they'll do is look at each other and feel a bit silly, because everybody does. Then you'll ask, how did that make you feel? You'll get a mix of responses. Some might say, I was just listening to the air conditioning or people chatting in the background, but most will say, I feel calmer, or I feel better, more ready. The purpose of this, beyond everything I've already explained, is to create a ritual around relationships. Every time we start relationships, we breathe. It becomes a signal. I'm breathing, I'm ready to begin. You just want a couple of short responses from people, and then you can move on. But before you start the session, be sure to thank them. This exercise can feel vulnerable and a bit silly for those who haven't done it before. The more you thank them for their courage in doing the exercise, the more they'll be willing to open up during the next exercises. Gratitude increases their willingness to engage more as we progress through the relationship's journey. Sometimes you might sense there's a risk of someone going too deep. It's rare. It's only happened to me once in my career, but it's important to be prepared. If you're unsure about the group's readiness or comfort level, you can set a boundary by saying, only share what you would be comfortable leaving the room. This can prevent participants from going too far, but it also limits how vulnerable they're willing to be, which might hinder the depth of the experience. For example, I've worked with a leadership team where there was significant distrust among the members. They weren't ready to be vulnerable with one another, and in that case, I used the comfortable leaving the room line to ensure no one shared something that could later be weaponized or used against them. If you feel this kind of risk exists, it's a good idea to apply this constraint. That said, this is an exception rather than the norm. Most of the time, it's better to allow people to go deep because they will surprise you. And if someone does share more than they expected, it's essential to know how to guide them toward therapy or other support resources to ensure their safety and well-being. The way we're setting this up is as a moment of pride in their lives. We're not inviting people to revisit traumatic experiences. Instead, we're focusing on moments they're most proud of, moments that brought them joy or fulfillment. We're not trained psychologists or therapists, and it's important to remember that. If a client does get triggered by their sharing, it's not our role to solve that for them, and attempting to do so can be deeply dangerous. If you notice someone beginning to relive the trauma, I simply ask them to pause, take a moment to breathe, and calm themselves. Then I gently remind them, this is about sharing things that make you feel good. This is meant to be a positive experience. I often say, please only share what, when you leave today, leaves you feeling uplifted. If that means they want to stop sharing at any point, that's absolutely fine. This isn't a forced march through difficult emotions. It's meant to be uplifting. We're here to help them connect with their authentic selves in a way that feels safe, positive, and empowering. Then we move into the main part of the session, which is a deeper bond. There is a variation of this centered around gratitude. The feedback from this has been incredible. People described it as magical or the best part of the day. And we're not talking about naturally sentimental people here. Some of these were gruff, oil and gas type folks. So even the ones you might expect to reject this process, they don't. It always resonates. In advance of the session, during the discovery phase, or when sending out the invite, you need to tell participants to bring an object that represents a moment or event in their lives they're most proud of. We use pride as the theme because it naturally leads people into deeper conversations about their values. Even people who think they have someone they've never been able to get along with often discover a shared set of values beneath the surface. These shared values tend to cluster around 4 themes: family, community, service, and, in the US, faith. These are common threads that connect people. I've seen this firsthand. A few weeks ago, I was in the Middle East working with a very large AI company. The general counsel shared that she had never gotten along with the deputy CEO. But when he spoke about his commitment to building a country, she finally understood him. She realized he cared about his community in the same way she cared about hers, and it completely shifted her perspective. That's the goal here, to uncover the deeper values and shared themes that align and bond the team. When you introduce the session, start by saying something like, "Okay, so you've all brought your objects with you." You'll immediately notice one or two people squirming if they haven't brought theirs. At that point, invite anyone who hasn't brought an object to take out their phone and search for an image that represents their object. Give them time to do this before the sharing begins. If they start searching while others are sharing, it can become massively distracting. They're not listening, and it disrupts the flow, so make sure they have a moment to prepare before moving on. One suggestion: if you sense that someone in the room has high emotional intelligence and is likely to share something deeply personal, select them first. Don't leave it open for anyone to volunteer. The tone set by the first person will influence everyone else who follows. If the first person goes deep, others will feel encouraged to do the same. I've seen this play out many times. The last time I ran this exercise, the CEO initially planned to share something lighter, but changed their mind after hearing others. Choosing the right person to set the tone can make all the difference in how the session unfolds. I don't tend to share my personal stories during this exercise because I feel it's about them as a group and about them finding their own common ground, rather than me injecting my story into the process. I found that generally people understand this. If you're positioning yourself as part of the team, then absolutely you should share. That's the relationship you're trying to build. However, I only share if I'm explicitly invited to be part of the team. If they say, "No, we want you at the table as an equal participant," then I'll share. Otherwise, I step back and take myself out of the exercise. Most of the time, leadership teams consider us part of the group. There's often a deep love and bond that develops between the coach and the leadership team over the course of the journey. They'll want to include you, whether it's in the exercise or by inviting you out to dinner. In that model, yes, I would share. They've got 2 minutes to share. I often tell them, if you want to give a long speech, that's great, but this isn't the time for it. Instead, encourage them to be brief and focus on 2 key things: why this gives them pride, and how it influences their outlook on life right now. How has it shaped them? Keeping the focus on these points ensures the sharing remains positive and impactful. Your role during this is twofold, beyond just managing time. First, you're responsible for maintaining a sense of safety in the room. Sometimes people might overshare, and others may feel the need to jump in, offering solutions or sharing their point of view. You need to gently manage that. There may also be moments when someone becomes emotional or starts crying. When this happens, give them the space they need to express those feelings. I always bring a box of tissues with me, and simply offering it to someone can show that you're there for them in a supportive way. It's a small but thoughtful gesture that says, "I'm here for you." The second part of your role is to note any recurring themes or common threads you hear during the sharing. At the end of the exercise, you'll want to highlight these, drawing attention to the shared values and connections within the group. You can say something like, "As a group, we are deeply bonded, and these are the themes that tie us together." That's what you're trying to get to through this exercise. So, note, either very explicitly on a flip chart if you want, or in your own personal notes, but just make sure you capture those because it's really important at the end. The person who speaks then gets to nominate the next person. I often make a joke about it being a gift or a curse. Nominate someone you love or someone you hate. Let's just assume it's someone you love. And everyone has a little chuckle. Then it goes around. At the end, we want to start to pose some reflective questions. If someone has had a really traumatic experience, reinforce the confidentiality point and remind them that support is available if needed. The 3 questions I pose are: what moments stood out to you? Were there any surprises or moments of inspiration? And did any themes emerge? Everyone will naturally focus on surprises and moments of inspiration. You'll hear things like, "Sarah, that was beautiful. I never knew you did that." That's important because it's about participants reflecting to each other the beauty of what they've heard. But after about a minute of this, you need to transition and say, "Okay, so can we now start talking about the themes?" The themes are the most important part. If people struggle to identify them, bring back the themes you heard: family, community service, and faith. Those will generally be the recurring threads. Point out to the group, look at just how much things in common we have as a team. Help them see that they are genuinely bonded at a deep level. Emphasize that this bond is what will carry them forward as a collective. This will be a glowing moment for the group. The last time I ran this, someone came up to me and said, if we'd done nothing else for the rest of the day except this one session, it would have been perfect. This was all we needed. Everything else might have been great, but this session is often the one that matters most, the moment they realize they are all connected and driven by similar values. You'll then close out the relationships component. Compared to other parts of Bloom Growth OS, you might wonder, why do we have such a dramatic start and a dramatic close? The reason is that we're shifting their mindset, their beliefs, and their energy. We want them to clearly know when they're going into relationships and when they're coming out of it. This ensures the rest of the day doesn't just bleed into each other, which could dilute the effect of relationships. This close is a shorter version of reflection. While asking them for standouts might feel a bit repetitive, especially after a deeper bond, it's still really important. It helps consolidate and cement in their minds what they've taken from the session. Even if it's familiar, this final reflection reinforces the impact of the experience. What you can do with those reflections is write them down in your notebook. Then, when you return on day 30, you can open the session around relationships by reminding them of those takeaways. It's like an instant shortcut, reconnecting them to the emotion and positivity they were feeling at the end of day 1. It acts as a cheat code for bringing them right back into that mindset, setting the tone for the session. Next, you'll be setting their homework for day 30, which is the penultimate task. As I mentioned earlier, much of the work for relationships happens outside the room. For this, we'll ask them to write a letter from their future self, set 5 years from today. Here's why we frame it as 5 years. If you ask people to reflect on 3 years or closer, they often get constrained by the limitations or inhibitions of their present situation. They can't fully imagine beyond where they are today. On the other hand, if you push it to 10 years, it becomes too vague or nebulous, and they start envisioning themselves as someone like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, or whoever their point of admiration is. This is about getting very tangible. We want them to think about the leader they will have become in 5 years. What did they achieve? What barriers did they overcome? How did they grow? The purpose of this is that when we get to day 30, yes, there will be another sharing exercise. But the key message is, why wait 5 years to achieve that? Why not start overcoming those barriers today and begin realizing your potential now? To make this actionable, they'll create a visual roadmap, a clear picture of where they want to be and how they'll get there. Some people might decide to write a long, detailed account, especially the more creative individuals. I always remind participants that this isn't about writing War and Peace. We're looking for something concise, about 2 minutes to read, or at least with headlines and highlights that take 2 minutes to share. They can use any medium they like. There's no need to submit it in advance or overthink it. The goal is simply to bring it with them to day 30, where they'll share it with the group. At the end, we close out this component by saying something like, look, I'm really proud of you and I'm really grateful. Again, the goal is to help them feel good about being vulnerable and engaging with a process that might have felt a little silly, exposing, or uncomfortable at first, but is ultimately deeply rewarding. We also want to set the tone for what's next by saying, I'm looking forward to seeing your letters. This isn't just encouragement, it's about creating a subtle sense of emotional obligation. The idea is to instill a feeling of, I don't want to disappoint my coach, I want to come back with my letter. It's a small psychological nudge to ensure follow-through. Then you simply acknowledge the journey you're on together and say you're looking forward to what's ahead. Now that we've completed the relationships exercise, we can go back to the agenda and check it off. You will likely take a break here. Now we're going to go on and set 90-day priorities and clean up the O&O list afterward. These are our most important projects where we are building a better business. During the 90-minute discovery meeting, you would have captured 3 or 4 opportunities or obstacles. Before the team's Bloom Day 1, add those O&Os to the O&O list as a starting point. Capturing those 3 to 4 O&Os from the 90-minute discovery meeting impresses upon your client that you were actively listening, such that you wrote what the team shared from the 90-minute discovery meeting and you're organized and thoughtful enough to bring it here. You're going to say, in preparation for today, here are the 4 things that I thought should be on our opportunities or obstacles list from what you shared when we were together for the 90-minute discovery meeting. Then read them to the team one by one. I also captured a few O&Os during our check-in to keep in mind as we get ready to set our first set of quarterly priorities. Ideally, you already have Bloom Day 90 on the calendar from when you scheduled all 4 days: Bloom Day 1, Bloom Day 30, Bloom Day 60, and Bloom Day 90. Assuming you have Bloom Day 90 already scheduled, you'll say, please write in the date specific and measurable outcome by this date, approximately 90 days from today. Then look through the O&O list, use your common sense, and write down the top 5 most important things for the entire organization to accomplish by that date. Always prioritize by the most important, never by the most interesting, urgent, or easy. This is work I want you to do individually and quietly. Does everybody understand what we're doing right now? Sometimes someone in the room will say, okay, we're starting to do work. Yes, we're starting to do work. You're going from being relatively passive in this meeting to being very active. The things you're about to say are going to be front and center in our content and conversations this afternoon. So yes, I need you to do the best work, the sharpest work we're going to do all day, right now. This is the time. Always prioritize by what's most important. Don't let things that are simply interesting, urgent, or easy make the list. Of course, sometimes things that are interesting, urgent, or easy will also be your most important, and that's great. But not always. Make sure your prioritization filter is focused on what's most important for the entire organization. As you brainstorm the list, go through the O&O list and identify somewhere between 8 and 12 things that could be in the top 5. Then write those 8 to 12 things down in the client workbook, and then come back and number them by importance. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and pick the top 5. When that happens, gently nudge them and whisper so it's not embarrassing in front of the whole team. If you could add some specific outcome that's quantifiable by the date for each one of these, that would be great. You'll look over, and the next person is doing it right. Then you'll see someone 2 seats over who isn't. Again, try to find a positive. Oh, this one here is specific, but if you could make these other 4 a little bit more specific, that'd be great. Again, lean over their shoulder, speaking quietly so I don't disturb others, and because you just told them to do this activity silently. The goal here is to get everybody doing the work properly. You need to walk around the room a few times and give that invitation or gentle nudge. It also reinforces that, hey, I'm in charge here. We're following the rules. The way these exercises are designed is how we're going to do them. You're managing the day, you're using your timer, and you are in charge. Don't let an easily distracted visionary person take the baton away. If someone ever says, oh, could I draw something on the board and have your marker? You say, no, thank you. I'm happy to write whatever you'd like. What would you like me to put on the board? Please sit down. Tom. This process works best in person. Let's assume it's Bloom Day 1 and you're in the room together. While the whole journey can be done virtually, I hope you're doing this in person. Flip charts or a whiteboard works well. Next, you're going to capture everybody's feedback. Start with one person and ask for just the headlines of all 5 of their priorities, not the specifics. While you're writing the headline, they can add how to make it specific and measurable if needed, which keeps the room engaged and avoids dead air space. Capture the first person's top 5 as quickly as possible. Always rotate where you start around the table, and don't let the same person go first every time. We want everyone to start an equal number of times throughout the day. After the first person shares, turn to the next person. Before they give their list, say, first, tell me which of your priorities are duplicates in spirit to what's already on the board. For example, you might say, I've got a duplicate on 2, 3, 3, 6, 7, and 8. All mine are up there already. For duplicates, add a dot next to it on the flip chart or whiteboard. Once they point out the duplicates, I'll ask, do you have any other specific outcomes that differ from what's already written? Let me know if there's something unique, and I'll add or adjust what's on the board. When someone shares an idea that's similar but worded differently, capture the nuance and say, that's interesting, I like your choice of words, and write down those 2 or 3 words to validate their work. This ensures everyone feels heard and respected. The key here is to avoid being the coach who says, that's close enough to what's already up there, and dismisses their input. Instead, you want to show them that their words matter and that you're paying attention. By the end of this exercise, you'll have a list of 5 priorities from each leader. If there are 6 leaders in the room, which is a typical team size, you'll likely have about 30 priorities on the board. Of course, you'll get a few extras because someone, usually the visionary, will break the rules and give you 6 or 7. So, you probably started with about 33 potential priorities, but after consolidating the duplicates, you'll land at around 11. It's very common for 4 or 5 of them to have a ton of overlap. Next, You will do 2 rounds of identifying quarterly priorities from this list. As a coach, you need to observe how aligned the team is. If you started with 33 priorities and they only consolidated down to 20 or 23, that's bad news. This team is not on the same page and they're way out of alignment. However, if you consolidated 33 priorities into fewer than 15, that's great news. I praise the team out loud. This is really good news for you and for me as your coach. You're already well aligned and on the same page. Look how many overlaps there were. This will make our job a little easier. Then, starting from the top of the list, you ask the same question, one item at a time. Is this one of the most important priorities for the company? And you keep moving quickly down the list, maintaining the pace. Now, using a different color marker, I'll ask, which ones do you think are the most important priorities on the board? It's often the ones with the most dots next to them, but it doesn't have to be. Which ones do you believe, without a doubt, are company-wide priorities across the whole organization? At this point, they'll start calling them out. That one, number 2, number 3, and number 5. Once you've got about 3 of them identified, I write down 1, 2, or 3 next to each. Then I say, it's usually pretty easy to land on about 3 right away. Now let's keep going. You need to drive this conversation. The team will want to slow down, discuss, and start problem-solving each item. They'll be so engaged that they'll naturally try to dig into the details of what's happening and start project managing. This is where you need to be strong. You can say, okay, team, we'll have plenty of time for that. You've got the entire quarter to discuss the details and solve these. Right now, our goal is simple. Identify the headline for these projects and define what the outcome needs to be 90 days from now. Stick with me here. This is not the project management session. As we go through our list, ask yourself, is this one of your top 7 most important things for the whole organization this quarter, or is it the 8th most important or below? It could still get chosen as a departmental quarterly priority, but let's clarify. Is this in the top 7? Yes or no? There will be some differences of opinion. Of course, someone in the room thinks it is because someone put it up there. You need to get people talking. Say, come on, tell me, is this top 7 or is it 8th or below? Let's start a conversation. This should take about 10 to 20 seconds per item. If they decide it's top 7, write a 4 next to it since we've already picked the first 3. If it's 8th or below, just leave it blank. Remember, you're writing these numbers in a different marker color. Since numbers 2 and 3 were already chosen earlier, move on to number 5. Ask the same question. Is this one of the 7 most important things for the entire company this quarter? If the team says yes, write a 5 next to it. If not, leave it blank. Continue through the list. Number 6, number 7, number 8, just keep going. Whether it's the 12th, 13th, or 14th item, you ask the same question. By the end, you'll land on 5 to 7 company quarterly priorities, the most important projects for the organization to focus on in the next 90 days. Now, you need to make these priorities specific and measurable. There are a couple of ways to do this. If you have a whiteboard, you can rewrite the headlines and facilitate a conversation about making each one specific and measurable. If a good whiteboard isn't available, go directly to Zoom or a similar tool, assuming there's a screen in the room. Pull up Bloom Growth software, type in the headline, and ask, okay, who in this room is going to own this? Adjust the due date in the software to match the Bloom Day 90 date and check the box for it to go on the growth plan. You are running the computer and the software at this point. Remember, they haven't been trained in Bloom yet, so you're guiding this process. You type the headline in there and as swiftly as possible, open up a conversation. Keep this conversation laser-focused on the headline, the thesis statement. These should be short, punchy words, 3 words or fewer ideally. I put a colon after that, and then I write the specific outcome for 90 days from now. Sometimes they'll want you to add a few notes in the notes section for things they want to remember. This part often goes back and forth as they talk through the project to make it more specific. Here's where you have to strike a balance. The better the specificity, the better the outcome. But don't let this drag on. As they talk through it, their brains start working, and they might wander into rabbit holes. Over and over, you need to facilitate by asking, what's the outcome going to be 90 days from now? Or what could we measure? And is that the right outcome? If you don't think it is, start questioning. You're actively participating here. Here's a mistake I made in my first couple of years as a coach. My teams would get good with how specific and measurable the priorities were, but then I'd waste another 10 to 20 minutes per priority trying to get it perfect for my taste. It turns out that doesn't matter. What's key is that the outcome is specific and measurable, and they're good with it. You want to move as fast as possible through this part. It's very common as a new coach to get tripped up and let the team talk about one quarterly priority for 25 minutes. Don't let that happen. Keep it focused, keep it moving, and trust that good enough is good enough. On average, you're spending about 5 to 7 minutes typing the headline and making it specific and measurable. One of the things I do is when clients are discussing what the priority actually is, actively listening. As they talk, you begin to put it together for them. You grab words from one person, combine it with what another person says, and you start drafting a rough version of what it looks like. This helps them get unstuck because they're often struggling with the wording or how to frame it. When you give them a starting point, like a rough draft of a clear, actionable title, it helps them move along faster. This is key. You're essentially writing the quarterly priority for them as you listen to their conversation. And here's where you'll get really good as a coach over time, because you'll hear priorities like this all the time. For example, when the team says hire a new CFO, you can quickly offer ways to make it specific and measurable. 3 qualified interviews in 90 days, offer accepted with a start date, or the person has their first day of work. Then you turn to the hiring manager or the HR person in the room and ask, which one makes the most sense? If they say offer accepted, you respond with, great, let's move forward with that. There's still enough time to get there. If they say we're already running ads, then you say, let's make it the person's first day of work. That's totally achievable in 90 days. If the new hire is a leadership team member, make sure the quarterly priority also includes that this person attends the next leadership quarterly session with you. Now, when it comes to balancing how much you're writing the quarterly priority for them and how much you let them discuss and wrap their arms around it, that's something you'll develop a gut feel for over time. You will certainly have to mess this up a bunch of times to find your own style and get great at it. When you're doing this really well, you're setting the most important and meaningful company and departmental priorities, and you're getting it done in 110 minutes. If you're doing it in less than 75 minutes, I'd start questioning the thoroughness of the work. There are some really strong sessions that fall between 90 minutes and 2 hours. Good for you and good for that team if you get those results. Just be careful. It's worth checking in on whether you've done it thoroughly enough if this wraps up too quickly. Once you've nailed down the 5 to 7 company priorities and they're entered into Bloom Growth, you'll look at the O&O list again. Focus on all the things that didn't get chosen. If you started with 15 items and chose 7, the remaining 8 or so will likely become departmental quarterly priorities. Typically, about 6 or 7 of those remaining items will fall into this category. This part moves much faster. If everyone has their tech open, they can enter their own priorities directly into the software. Once those are in, you can edit them as a group to make sure they're specific and measurable. If tech becomes a distraction or feels too slow, you can take control and type them in for everyone. On day 1, remember, there hasn't been any software training yet, so you may need to be the master enterer with your hands on the keyboard to keep things efficient. There are different ways to approach this, and you'll figure out what works best for you. What's most important is the outcome, that you've identified between 10 and 20 total priorities company-wide and individual. These are not the regular day-to-day operations of their business. These are special projects designed to build a better business. There is a grand total of between 10 and 20 priorities that the team has agreed are the most important projects to focus their special project energy on right now. You know who owns each one, and you have a clear idea of the expected outcome for each. The key here is to tell them the goal. Get started right away. That means tomorrow or within the next 24 hours. This is one of the secrets to success. The expectation is that they'll complete 80% of these priorities as written by the time you meet again on day 90. It's a game, one that we've created together, and we're playing it to build a better business. Once this work is complete, you'll likely need to take a quick bathroom break depending on the pace. When you return, bring the energy back into the room by checking off quarterly priorities on page 1 and saying, all right, it feels like our day is picking up momentum from this point forward. When you're done with the quarterly priority setting, go into the whiteboard or the flip charts or into Bloom Growth, wherever all the O and O's are captured, and you start a conversation that is about erasing 70% of it. Next, we are going to clean up the O&O list. These are opportunities and obstacles that have been captured from your 90-minute discovery meeting and today's session so far. 70% of these O&O's we're going to erase or delete right now. 15% of these O&Os are going to be left in your Bloom weekly meeting that we'll train on at the end of that day today, and 15% of them we're going to put in the parking lot. The parking lot O&Os might be a quarterly priority next time, which we'll reset on Bloom Day 90. We are going to move that super fast, no discussion. These are your 3 options. 1. Delete it, or 2. Leave it in your Bloom weekly meeting as something that you need to leverage this opportunity or remove this obstacle in the next 90 days. Or 3. It could be a quarterly priority in 90 days, and I'll put it in the parking lot to be reviewed on Bloom Day 90 test. The percentages you're shooting for, again, are 70% of the O&O list gets deleted because we just set a quarterly priority about it, or it's a duplicate of it written down somewhere else. Or now that you've set the most important things, it's clear this is not one of the most important things, you can just delete it. 70% get deleted, 15% stay in your Bloom weekly meeting, and 15% go into the parking lot. That's the O&O cleanup. Once complete, return to page 1 and have the team check off O&O List Clean-up. Next up, let's dive into the ideal leadership team structure, which is nuanced in how it's facilitated. This chart will be a recurring topic during our sessions: Bloom Day 1, Bloom Day 30, Bloom Day 60, and Bloom Day 90. By Bloom Day 90, the goal is to have agreed on the ideal leadership team structure that will enable us to increase growth or double the business as quickly as possible. Any variation of those outcomes works just fine. The best practices outlined here set the stage nicely. Smaller teams often execute faster than larger ones, and you'll want to maintain only 2 organizational layers. That means the person leading the leadership team and their direct reports. Clear, common-sense divisions of responsibility are typically the most effective. We'll work directly within Bloom Growth OS to start building this out, creating a rough draft today. It's important to frame this as a rough draft, or participants might feel stuck. You can set expectations by saying something like, if we get this 60% right today, improve it to 75% by Bloom Day 30, and reach 90% by Bloom Day 60, we'll be perfectly positioned to finalize it by Bloom Day 90. This incremental approach takes the pressure off getting everything perfect up front. Encourage them to take risks and experiment. To start the process, pull up the screen and focus on the positions reporting directly to the leadership team leader. That's what forms the leadership team. You get business, deliver your product or service, and pay for it. For simplicity, after you get work, you do the work, and once the work is done, you get paid. It's a straightforward way of looking at it. We'll start on the left-hand side, which we'll refer to as the sales and marketing part of the business. We aim to keep the team as small as possible. The first question to explore is whether the sales and marketing accountability in your business falls under one leader on the leadership team, or if it requires 2 leaders to support the growth needed to double the business. If your business operates in a B2B model, it's likely a sales-driven function. In many cases, it's perfectly fine for the marketing team or department to report directly to the sales leader. In a B2C model, marketing typically plays a more prominent role. It really depends on the business model. Sometimes marketing leads with sales or account management reporting up to marketing, and other times both sales and marketing leaders have seats on the leadership team, regardless of whether the model is B2B or B2C. At Bloom Growth, for example, we have one leader responsible for sales and marketing, but we've split things up further. Another leader focuses specifically on retention and growth, which is one way to divide the sales and marketing functions. For your business, retention and growth might fall more naturally under the do work or operation side of things. The reality is there's no universal answer. Each business is unique, much like a snowflake, in how these responsibilities are structured. Start by mapping out the sales and marketing piece. Is it 1 box, 2, or 3? Ideally, it's just 1, particularly for companies with revenue under $7, $10 million. From there, shift to the do work or operation side of the business. Typically, 80–85% of employees report to this function. Decide if one leader can handle this responsibility, which is common, or if it needs to be divided. For instance, if your business offers both products and services, you may require separate leaders for each. Facilitate a conversation to explore what makes sense for your business. You're only naming the seats with very simple names, not titles, no director, VP, or anything like that. Just say sales, marketing, product, service, finance, HR, tech. It's important to keep it simple and leave titles out to avoid any ego issues. We're also not talking about anyone's name or the current leaders in the room. This is about 12 months from today, what the structure of the fantasy team looks like to increase growth or double the business. It's not about the people, it's about the structure. Start with the common sense words for the roles, and then flesh out the 5 roles and responsibilities as you go. Sometimes, to decide if it's 1 seat or 2, you'll need to start defining the responsibilities to help make that decision. Both things are happening at the same time. You can leave gaps the first time through and come back to fill them in. If the team gets stuck, defining roles and responsibilities can help get things moving again. Eventually, you'll get to the right-hand side of the chart: admin, finance, data, HR, and internal tech. This seat is for the person responsible for having a plan for the money, commonly called a budget. They'll make sure there's a way to price things, get paid, and collect. They'll also ensure cash flow works and that there's enough money to invest in growth as you hit your targets. In smaller organizations, HR and internal IT often report to this finance person. In larger organizations, HR and IT leaders can be individual leadership team members. If these are support functions, they report to finance. But if they are strategic functions that make a significant difference in the marketplace, they could sit on the leadership team itself. Traditionally, HR doesn't sit on the leadership team until an organization has around 100 employees. Even for non-tech firms, HR often joins the leadership team at around 70 employees. For tech firms, HR can be on the leadership team as early as 50 employees, since recruiting is often a major factor in their success. Recruiting enough people and filling open positions becomes such a critical part of their strategy. As for the boilerplate roles and responsibilities for the person leading the leadership team, those are written down in the client workbook with coach notes. There's also boilerplate content for when there's a visionary in the room. They usually go to the left of the person running the leadership team. This process will likely be one of the most challenging parts for many of you to facilitate. The first 20 times take a lot of repetition to improve and refine the process. As an example, there was this time I thought had it easy because it was a smaller team. There were 3 people, and all of them had some form of equity in the business, so I didn't have to deal with many difficult conversations. Everyone was working in partnership to create the ideal structure to grow the business. We had to navigate that conversation about sales and marketing. Initially, they had both sales and marketing on the leadership team, along with maintenance and the property managers. It's a commercial property management company, and they ended up with 6 leadership team boxes, which was too many for their company size. After the first round, we revisited it and asked, what does this actually do? What are sales and marketing accountable for? When we got into the roles and accountabilities, it became clear that marketing didn't need a spot on the leadership team, and it ended up reporting under sales. With at least 40% of clients, you'll encounter situations where someone in the room doesn't have a seat on the ideal future leadership team. That's when you really get to see how selfless or abundant-minded people can be, or how much they'll fight for their own self-interest. Those situations, where someone doesn't seem to have a future seat, tend to be the more challenging ones. So just be aware and sensitive to that dynamic. Another key component is taking a genuine interest in their business. Allow yourself to geek out about their business and get excited about what they do. On Bloom Day 1, I often find myself learning things that genuinely intrigue me, like how they get paid, what their accounts receivable process is like, turnover rates, or the hardest challenges they're facing. You can start piecing things together as you listen to their O&O list, obstacles, and opportunities. By the afternoon, as you work on the ideal chart, you'll start connecting the dots based on what you've learned. Teams love seeing that you're invested in their business and care about what they're doing. Don't hesitate to say things like, earlier you mentioned how sales works here, so it sounds like marketing would be a support function of sales because of that, right? You're not there to do the work for them or tell them how it's going to be, but you can ask great questions, process what you've heard out loud, and show them that you truly understand their business. Once you've worked with 20 to 40 leadership teams, you'll start noticing patterns and repetitions. You'll find yourself saying things like, well, if that's true for your business, then this must also be true. Experience will help you draw even deeper insights. And they'll ask, how'd you know that? And you respond, well, I've worked with a couple of other teams with a similar business model, and it was true for both of them. That's when they go, that's interesting. Then you can say, so if that's true, then this must also be true, right? They'll confirm, and you follow up with, isn't that part of your business such a pain? And they'll say, it is, you're right. The moment you allow yourself to dive in and really fall in love with their business, you can extend the client relationship by at least 2 more quarters. Instead of staying for 2.5 years, they stick around for 3. In the short term, the most important thing is that they come back for days 30, 60, and 90. Getting them launched well is crucial. You're showing up as sharp as you can, genuinely invested in the entrepreneur, their team, and their success. When they see you care about their business and truly understand it, that's when things click. Another thing that really helped me during chart facilitation was focusing on the 5 to 6 bullets under each seat. Sometimes they wanted to go deeper and spend too much time refining one seat. I had to keep reminding them, this looks really good. Is it 70% good right now? Is it good enough for today? Remember, 70% is the goal for now. Can we move on to the next seat? We've got half the chart left to build, and we need to keep moving. That gentle nudge kept the process flowing while ensuring we stayed on track. You can't write a full job description underneath each one of these seats, right? Ideally, you're facilitating 5 concise bullet points that represent 80% of the value that person brings to the business and their role on the leadership team. In some cases, you might get to 90–100% of the value, but the goal is to keep it concise. Make sure the most important descriptive words come first in each bullet point. Depending on your font size in Bloom Growth, not all the keywords may be visible, so the first 3 words should immediately convey the core idea. These should be common sense descriptors that everyone will recognize at a glance. This isn't about writing sentences, just short, clear phrases. The idea is to focus on the 3 keywords that summarize the role or responsibility right after the bullet point. You'll be running the software while facilitating, asking the right questions, and following the process. Remember, on day 1, we're not talking about specific individuals. We're focusing only on the seats with literal common sense titles. No VP, director, or head of, just terms like sales, ops, or finance. The goal for day 1 is to get the seats and their roles and responsibilities 60–70% right. We'll revisit and start putting names in boxes when we come back together on day 30. Now that we're at this point, you can scroll back to the front of the book and check off ideal leadership team structure as 60–70% complete. Do you all agree? I think it's even 80% good. Let's move on to the 5-year vision. The 5-year vision is the North Star for your organization, and you'll be working through this during the session. Start by reading the bullet points in the workbook. The 5-year vision will require a bigger and better version of yourself as teammates and leaders, both personally and professionally, to achieve it. It's not something that will happen on your current trajectory. It's something meaningful, heartfelt, and measurable. That means it's something meaningful from the heart and something we can measure and can be a reality within the next 5 to 10 years. Typically, teams choose a target date between 5 and 10 years in the future for achieving their 5-year vision. The choice often depends on the nature of the business. Older, slower-growing businesses tend to prefer 10 years, while newer or faster-growing businesses usually opt for 5 years. For instance, many of my tech clients lean toward 5 years, while more traditional businesses, like manufacturers growing at 6% a year, prefer 10. That said, let them choose what feels right for their business. For a while now, many teams have been choosing the year 2030 because it's a nice round number and falls right in the middle of that 5 to 10-year range. Avoid letting them pick something more than 10 years out, though. You'll see 5-year vision examples in the workbook, which you're welcome to read aloud to the team. Next, you're going to invite the team into some silence to create a qualitative and quantitative statement for their 5-year vision. This should be something that calls them to be bigger than they know themselves to be. The goal should sit on the edge of exciting and scary. That's how you know it's big enough. It's not something they can already achieve in their current state. They might have some ideas about how to get there, but they don't need to know the exact path just yet. After all, they have 7 years to figure it out. We're not solving everything in this moment. Give them around 5 minutes to write down their best answers. During this time, you can walk around the room, glance over shoulders, and see what people are coming up with. Once the time is up, put their responses on the board. Often, you'll find the best result comes from combining parts of different answers. Maybe one person's quantitative statement is spot on, while someone else's qualitative piece is perfect. Combine them, wordsmith it a little, and see what you've got. This part of the agenda doesn't take long, about 30 minutes. It's important to remember this is just the first iteration. You'll have more opportunities to refine it on days 30, 60, and 90. Right now, aim for 70–80% good work. About 50% the time, you'll land on something magical in this first pass. It'll be someone's favorite part of the day, and it won't need much tweaking later. The other half of the time, it'll be good enough to move on to the next agenda item and can be improved during future sessions. Remind them this only needs to be 70% good right now. Encourage them by saying, "This is a great start. I love what we've got so far." Walk through it with them, pop it into the software, and then move on. The other thing to tell them is, "Hey, we're not sharing this with anyone right now. We're building it out over these sessions." Keep the tone assumptive and continue to sell them on the journey. We've set this at 70% good today. By the end of day 90, 3 months from now, this will be 90% good or better. Then we'll share it with the rest of the organization. Those are all great words. I also invite people not to even share it with their spouse. I explain, this is unfinished work and you want the freedom to change it. If you go home and share it, your spouse might ask, "Well, how are you going to do that?" And your answer will likely be, "We don't know yet." That can feel unsatisfying, but it's okay because we've got plenty of time to figure it out. You can offer a stock response for when employees or spouses ask that question. "We don't know yet, but we'll figure it out together, 1 quarter at a time." Now it's time to return to the front of the client workbook and check off the next agenda item. The 5-year vision is done. Beautiful. Just 2 things left. We're probably taking a break now, and when we come back, we'll dive into Bloom Weekly Meeting Training. By this point, the client already has their Bloom account set up. You'll log into their Bloom account and go straight to their Bloom Weekly Meeting. Have them turn to this section in the client workbook, encourage everyone to write down a few notes, and also display them on the screen using the PowerPoint. You'll notice that the KPIs are grayed out since those will be created on day 30. So here's how it starts. For the check-in, you've got 6 people in the room, and the check-in takes 5 minutes total. That means about 45 seconds per person. Everyone should come prepared to share the most meaningful thing going on in their life over the last 7 days, both personally and professionally, and the impact, significance, or feeling they have about each. You can share both in 45 seconds if you've thought about it beforehand. I usually prepare by reflecting on it as I'm walking down the hall to the meeting or while I'm getting my coffee before sitting in front of Zoom. It doesn't take much time at all, whether the meeting is in person or virtual. Remind them to arrive early, 5 to 7 minutes early is ideal. Then, very deliberately, start the meeting right when the clock hits the designated time. The next step is to review the quarterly priorities we just set. Your goal here is to extract 2 O&Os, either opportunities to leverage or obstacles that might be getting in the way. Use the little button in Bloom, click it, and add the O&O. Repeat this for the 2 items you believe you can act on today, either by leveraging the opportunity or removing the obstacle to keep these priorities moving forward. Next on the agenda is KPIs. For now, skip this section. We'll put it together on day 30, and I'll train you on this part of the meeting then. Now on to headlines. Think of these as company news. It's 5 minutes of drinking from the fire hose. The perfect share is about 10 seconds long, and you'll aim to get 25 pieces of information shared. About 90% of the content should be positive, covering everything the leadership team benefits from knowing to stay in the loop. This could include significant sales wins, people wins, vendor wins, PR mentions, compliments, or any other positive updates about your employees over the past week. It's all about sharing every little thing that's gone right and helps keep everyone informed. By sharing these 15 to 25 updates every 7 days, all of you as leaders will stay in the know about everything happening in the business. It's important for maintaining alignment and awareness. Later on, after day 90 or even their first quarterly, when you're rolling this out to department teams, we'll take some of these headlines and forward them to their Bloom weekly meetings. This will gradually become a key way your organization communicates. For the 10% of headlines that might be bad news, our focus is on extracting an opportunity or identifying an obstacle to add to the O&O list. If you've shared 15 to 25 headlines, there's at least one that deserves to move to the O&O list. Next, move on to to-dos. During your very first week, you likely won't have any unless you've already taken some today. To-dos are the most sacred promises you make to each other every 7 days. This isn't a mushy list of tasks that might get done someday. It's a list of your most critical commitments. In the meeting, to-dos arise naturally during O&O discussions. They're the outcomes of decisions made in those discussions. Someone takes a to-do to ensure that the decision is acted on, and the team checks in on its completion the following week. The goal is to achieve 90% completion every 7 days. You shouldn't take on a to-do unless you're 90% sure you can complete it within that time frame. It's okay to say no if capacity is an issue. The person running the leadership team uses to-dos to manage the team's progress. Typically, each leader will have 1 to 3 to-dos. These are not just any tasks, but the 1 to 3 things you committed to completing by the next Bloom meeting. Sometimes a to-do doesn't get completed because it ran into an obstacle. When that happens, you add the obstacle to the O&O list. By this point, you've likely added 4 fresh O&Os, 2 from quarterly priorities, at least 1 from headlines, and at least 1 from to-dos. Throughout the week, as opportunities or obstacles arise, you'll want to add about 1 O&O per leader to the list. Most of these can wait for the meeting. Very few are so urgent that they require interrupting the team outside of this time. Between these meetings, you'll be adding items to the list, either by using the button at the top of the Bloom Growth software or through the mobile app. The habit I want you to develop is adding 3 to 5 headlines between meetings, almost like 1 a day. Pick the best thing that happened each day and aim to add 1 opportunity or obstacle each week. I encourage you to log into the Bloom Growth software every day. Assuming you're using Chrome, I demonstrate how to right-click on the tab in Chrome and use the pin option. That way, every time you open Chrome, Bloom Growth is one of the first tabs, your password is saved, and accessing it is simple. Now, for the part of the meeting that many leaders say is their favorite 60 minutes of the week, O and O'ing. With 6 people in the room, if everyone added 1 issue between meetings, plus the 4 we just added, and any left from last week, you've now got 10 fresh O&Os to tackle. I usually sort this list by newest or most recently added, which you can do using the sort function right above the O&Os. From there, we pick issues in groups of 3. Call out the top 3 most important items. Pick, pick, pick. Those 3 rise to the top of the list, and we start with the first one. This is where I train them to identify the root cause by asking why and determining whether the issue requires a decision or is simply about sharing information. By going slow, I mean spending a meaningful minute to dig into the root cause and clarify the outcome we want from discussing the issue today. When we're crystal clear and focused on the desired outcome, the actual discussion moves much faster, which is great. The last step is solving the O&O. Here we slow down again to craft meaningful to-dos. Sometimes the solution requires sequencing, with 2 or 3 to-dos assigned to different team members. It's important to take our time to get these just right, ensuring they align with the discussion we just had. The goal is to solve the issue in a permanent and inspiring way, creating to-dos that are 90% reliable predictions of being completed by the next Bloom Weekly meeting. You'll start with the first 3 O and O's, going through this process for each one. Once those are done, pick another 3, and if there's time, keep going until you have about 5 minutes left in the meeting. Then move into the wrap-up. Once you've assigned to-dos, make sure to hit the Solve button to remove the resolved items from your O&O list. That's part of the satisfaction, seeing the list get smaller. On average, teams get through 6 issues in 60 minutes, which works out to about 10 minutes per meaningful discussion. Some weeks you'll only get through 1 or 2 issues. Other weeks you might get through 12. But on average, teams work through 6. The goal is to aim for an inspiring, permanent solution. That's what you're striving for. That said, in my experience, 9 out of 10 times you're applying a Band-Aid. A Band-Aid might look like this. A client is really upset and threatening to leave because we screwed up their project this week. The Band-Aid solution is figuring out who's going to call the client, apologize, offer a discount, or find a way to keep them from leaving. It's a quick fix to address the immediate issue. A permanent, inspiring solution goes deeper. It's about identifying the root cause, whether it's a flaw in the strategy, a problem with the person managing the account, or an issue with the process itself. Then you work out how to change the strategy, improve the person, or fix the process. That's the path to a meaningful decision. However, the reality is that most weeks, all you'll have the bandwidth for is the Band-Aid. You save the client, stabilize the situation, and live to fight another day. But about 1 in 10 issues, or roughly once every 2 weeks if you're averaging 6 issues per week, you'll achieve a permanent, inspiring decision. That might look like someone having the courage to say, "We need to let Sally go." This is the last straw. I've already written the job description for her replacement. Then we're ready to start the wrap-up. A couple of things we want to accomplish in the wrap-up each week are figuring out the most valuable part of the meeting and identifying one thing we could do better as a team in running the meeting next week. Just have the person running the meeting write down the top 2 improvement ideas people share. Then make sure to bring them up at the start of the next meeting. The goal is to end the meeting exactly on time. To do this, stop O&O'ing with about 8 minutes left, giving yourself 3 minutes of buffer for the wrap-up. Make it okay to schedule a call or another Zoom meeting right after this one because you've committed to starting and ending this meeting precisely on time. That discipline is part of improving execution and communication. It's about running the meeting crisply. Finally, after your first meeting, I will talk to someone in the room the morning after the first Bloom Weekly meeting for 15 minutes. Write down any questions you have after your first meeting, and I'll follow up with you the next morning. Then, I'll talk to that same person again the morning after the following Bloom Weekly meeting to ensure everything's on track. I often say, we're going to go ahead and take a break before we come back and wrap. During this time, I'll handle some scheduling. I get everything on the calendar right then and there, make sure they have my mobile number, and let them know they can call me if needed. I also remind them that we'll train on this process again when we're together on day 30. They don't need to do it perfectly, but they do need to do it. The key is getting the reps in and practicing. It's the only way I can help them improve. It's really important to get started and just do it. Then, facilitate a conversation about choosing the day and time for their weekly meeting. Most teams decide on a time before noon on Tuesday, somewhere between the start of the day on Monday and noon on Tuesday is typical. Also remind them that in the future, all departments will be having a similar meeting. For example, their top team might meet from 9:30 to 11 a.m. on Monday, followed by a department team meeting from 1:30 to 3 p.m. on the same day. With those top 2 layers aligned, leveraging opportunities, and removing obstacles every 7 days, progress toward their goals will start picking up speed. By this point in the day, people are usually tired of checking things off, but you can still have them check off the last items. I usually say something like, check off the last 2. It's quick, doesn't take much time at all, and wraps things up nicely. Once that's done, confirm the schedule for their meetings and your follow-ups, including training on the meetings. Let them know they'll get plenty of questions, and you'll be there to help answer them. The wrap-up for our day is pretty straightforward. Start by asking, what was your favorite or most valuable part of the day? What are your thoughts? How are you feeling? Then follow with, what's the number one thing we can do better when we're together on day 30 in terms of how we work together as a team? Next, ask everyone to write down a meaningful compliment for the person on their left. As you go around the room, each person shares their favorite part of the day, one area for improvement, and then turns to the person on their left, makes eye contact, squares their body, and delivers a generous compliment. The recipient simply says, thank you, and then it moves on to the next person. For the next session, we are going to ask them to write a letter from their future self, set 5 years from now, that seeks to help them visualize themselves as the leader they wish to become, and through understanding what might be holding them back from that potential, to start unlocking that now. It also acts as another powerful bonding exercise for the team, as it allows the leaders to share their heartfelt beliefs and hopes for whom they wish to become. Looking ahead to our next time together, I want to give you a reflective task to think about before our Day 30 session. This exercise is designed to help you reflect on your future as a leader and the steps you're taking to evolve. I'd like each of you to write a short letter from your future self, set 5 years from now. Imagine you're looking back at your journey and answering these key questions. How have you evolved as a leader? What achievements and traits are you most proud of? What challenges have you overcome? How do others perceive you as a leader? Take time to reflect on these questions and be honest and bold in your vision for yourself. This letter will help guide your personal development as a leader and give us a foundation for future discussions. A few notes for you as you facilitate sharing this homework. Sometimes people think about this in purely professional terms or in the context of the business. You need to encourage them to see this letter as a personal reflection and a way to think intentionally about their leadership evolution over the next 5 years. Remind them that there must be 100% attendance at Bloom Day 30, as it's a mandatory meeting. The only acceptable excuse for missing is being on vacation. They also need to run their Bloom Weekly meeting every week as promised, with everyone attending, and to bring their courage to make permanent, inspiring decisions during 3-ding, discover, discuss, and decide. Encourage them to say uncomfortable things for the greater good of the organization and to keep all of our work confidential, emphasizing that everything we've done so far is still rough draft work. Give everyone 2 minutes to write down their answers. Once the last pen is down, start going around the room. If someone hasn't started much during the day, gently nudge them to go first. For example, you might say, "Josh, you haven't hardly started anything today, so you're up first." As the coach, write down their favorite parts of the day and the biggest areas for improvement. You don't need to record the compliments. When you open Bloom Day 30, remind them of the improvement ideas they shared at the end of today's session. Once the round of meaningful compliments is complete, you can choose whether to participate. If you decide not to, simply have the person on your right give their compliment to the person on your left. As coach, you can decide. Then you say, "What a day. Look at that. We're wrapping 6 minutes ahead of schedule. I just want to finish by saying how much I appreciate you trusting me and getting started on this journey. You showed up for day 1 exactly as I'd hoped, and you're doing it perfectly. This is going to be a fun and exciting journey." Then you add, "One more thing I want you to know. My business grows 100% through referrals from happy clients like you. It's okay to introduce me to any business owner you know, even right now. You don't have to wait a year until you feel like you've mastered all of this. Sometimes clients want to wait, but I just want you to know that it's perfectly fine to send referrals my way now. All it takes is an email introduction with me and any business owner. I'll take it from there and promise to make you look good." And that concludes Bloom Day 1. Thank you.